Hi, it's Alex from Groovy Entertainment. Today we got another book to read for you. Today's book is The Tale of Peter Rabbit from 1993. So let's get started. Once upon a time there was four little rabbits, and their names was Floppy, Moppy, and Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the roof of a very big fir tree. Now, my dear, said old Mrs. Rabbit, one morning you may go to the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I am going out. Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the woods to the baker. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Floppy, Moppy, and Cottontail, who was good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mrs. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. First he ate some lettuce and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes, and then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. But round the end of a cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees pulling out young cabbage, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was most dreadful frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the garden. He lost one of his shoes amongst the cabbage and the other amongst the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that I think he might have got away altogether if he had not unfortunately ran into a gooseberry nest and got caught by the large button on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs was overheard by some friendly sorrows who flew to him in great excitement, and it drove him to expect himself. Mr. McGregor came up with a new sleeve which he intended to pop up on top of Peter, but Peter wiggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind him, and rushed into a tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it hadn't had so much water in it. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps underneath a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each. Presently, Peter sneezed. Kachoo! Mr. McGregor was after him in no time, and tried to pull his foot upon Peter, who jumped out of the window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter. He went back to his work. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright. He had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp from sitting in that can. After a time had begun to wonder about going lippity lippity, not very fast, he looked all around. He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to her family. in the woods. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he began more and more puzzled. Presently, he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his water can. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat, she sat very, very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it was alive. Peter thought it was best to go away without speaking at her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. He went back toward the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Peter scuttered underneath the bushes, but presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed up on a wheelbarrow and peeked over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned toward Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could. Along a straight walk behind some black currant bushes, Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the woods outside the garden. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him until he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. I am sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made him some caramel tea and gave him a dose of it to Peter. One tablespoonful to be taken at bedtime. But Floppy, Moppy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. So that was the tale of Peter Rabbit for 1993. So if you like, subscribe, share, and comment, have a groovy day. But another video coming out real soon.